Ancient myths hold secrets that written words alone cannot contain. We are about to uncover 33 echoes in stone and clay carvings that preserve entire scenes missing from the texts. By the end of this journey, you will possess a completely new understanding of legendary tales, one that challenges everything you thought you knew. What if a king's coronation was guided by stars no manuscript mentions? Why would a colossal battle between titans be erased from history? These silent stones have the power to rewrite mythology, revealing hidden truths and perspectives that parchment and ink chose to forget. What forgotten story would you most want to see carved into eternity? Deep within a ceremonial plaza carved from a single stone block, a king kneels not before a high priest, but under a canopy of unfamiliar stars. This is the first echo, the unrecorded coronation of a mythical king. The carving shows a ritual so profound it was entirely scrubbed from the written records. Where texts speak of lineage and divine right, this stone shows a ceremony rooted in the cosmos itself. The king is being anointed by beams of starlight, each one carefully chiseled to connect with a specific constellation arching overhead. Priests flank him, but they hold no traditional scepters or sacred texts. Instead, they clutch bizarre, geometric artifacts that look like astrological tools, their gazes fixed on the sky. As expert doctor Elena Vance points out, this artifact suggests royal legitimacy was directly tied to cosmic events, a concept completely absent from the chronicles. The king's crown is unlike any other found from his era, designed with spiraling patterns that mirror a specific galaxy. And watching this entire celestial transfer of power are mythical beasts, stone griffins and serpents, carved as silent witnesses to a pact between the ruler and the heavens. Every ritual gesture, every alignment of the figures seems to map onto the turning of seasonal cycles. What does this tell us? It reveals that power was not just inherited, it was earned through a perceived harmony with the universe. Scribes may have recorded the politics, but the stone reveals the magic, the actual ceremony that made a man a king in the eyes of his people and his gods. This single carving forces us to reconsider the very foundation of ancient rulership, built on a celestial stage that writing deliberately omitted. High on a forgotten mountainside, a second echo thunders through the ages. A colossal relief carved directly into the living rock depicts a war of the worlds. Here, elemental titans of earth and fire clash in a conflict so immense it reshaped the very land, a battle that every written myth completely ignores. One titan, its form hewn from jagged stone, raises a mountain peak as a club. Its opponent, a being of molten rock and fury, hurls rivers of lava that are carved flowing through the air. The landscape itself is their arsenal, with chasms splitting the ground and storms boiling around their fists. Historian Dr. Liam Crow suggests this scene points to a pre-Olympian struggle, a chaotic war for primal control that later, more orderly pantheons may have chosen to forget. The carving is astoundingly specific. You can see the combat techniques, like one titan summoning a vortex of wind and stone from its open hands. Their armor is not metal, but plates of enchanted minerals that gleam even in the stone. We can identify each colossal figure by their elemental affiliation, earth against fire, with the geography itself bearing the scars of their fight. Canyons are shown forming where a blow landed, and new volcanoes erupting from the impact. Scattered throughout the scene, almost lost in the monumental chaos, are lesser beings, nymphs and early humans, carved in a desperate flight from the devastation. An example from a similar site in a distant valley shows a localized folktale about a mountain that was once a sleeping giant. a story that never entered the canonical texts. Why would such a dramatic, world-altering event be scrubbed from the official records? Perhaps this raw, untamed power of the elements conflicted with the more structured, human-like gods who later claimed dominion. This echo is a stark reminder that some truths are simply too vast, too violent, and too monumental to be confined to fragile parchment alone. They needed a mountain to hold their story. Deep within a secluded grove, a third echo reveals a covenant of quiet understanding. A weathered clay tablet preserves a secret pact between village elders and the forest spirits themselves. This agreement, a vow of mutual protection, is a scene you will not find in any grand mythic anthology. The carving shows a circle of humans, their postures humble and open, offering baskets of the first harvest. They are not presenting these gifts to gods on high, but to gentle, tree-like entities whose forms seem to sway even in the hardened clay. In return, these nature spirits extend limbs that are not quite branches, their gestures a clear bestowal of protection. Anthropologist Dr. Sophia Chen interprets this as a profound symbiotic relationship, a practical spirituality rooted in coexistence that written texts consistently overlook. Every element of the scene speaks to this delicate balance. The elders wear ceremonial attire woven from specific leaves and vines, marking this as a seasonal, recurring ritual. Their gifts are not gold or jewels, but carefully depicted sheaves of grain, ripe fruits, and honeycombs, all symbols of a successful harvest. The spirits respond not with words, but through the imagery around them. Where their touch meets the ground, the clay shows flowers blooming and saplings sprouting, a direct visual promise of fertility and safety from storms or blight. This local, grassroots diplomacy finds faint echoes in regional oral tales, stories of a village that never flooded because it honored the old willow, yet these stories never earned a place in the official scrolls. Why would such a vital, life-sustaining arrangement be omitted from the records? It suggests that the scribes who codified mythology were often more concerned with the dramas of celestial kings and the conflicts of grand pantheons. They recorded the stories of power, while this humble tablet preserves the story of survival. Here, in this quiet grove, myth was not about dominion over nature, but a sacred partnership with it. A different kind of echo was found far from any temple, carved on a coastal stone stele lashed by sea spray. It reveals a fourth mystery, the celestial navigation of ancient mariners. These sailors believed the stars were living guides, constellations that moved and spoke, offering directional advice through silent, cosmic dialogues. Maritime archaeologist Dr. Ben Carter explains that this artifact points to a mythological understanding of astronomy, one that was both deeply practical and profoundly magical, a perspective later rationalized out of existence. The carving is alive with this forgotten partnership. We see the sailors in their distinct crescent-shaped vessels, their bodies angled not just toward the horizon, but upward in ritual poses of listening and reception. They hold unique instruments, not simple quadrants, but ornate, shell-like devices pressed to their ears, seemingly tuned to the heavens. Above them, the constellations are not mere points of light. They are depicted as great celestial animals, a wolf whose howling muzzle points the way, a whale whose swimming tail indicates a safe current. The navigators interact with these beings, their hands raised in acknowledgement as if receiving silent instructions. Other carvings from distant shores show similar scenes, a widespread practice among coastal cultures where the sky was a chart of living legends. Why would such a vital, unifying belief vanish from the written records? It was likely considered common knowledge, the intimate, everyday magic of every sailor, deemed too mundane or too esoteric for the scribes who recorded grander epics. This fourth echo highlights a world where myth and science were not separate, but braided together into a single rope that guided humanity across the terrifying and wonderful unknown. Inside a cavern carved to resemble a celestial forge, a fifth echo unveils a secret workshop of the gods. Here, deities are not spontaneously generating life, but meticulously crafting the mythical creatures that fill our legends. A sprawling relief shows them assembling griffins and chimeras piece by piece, a detailed, mechanistic process of creation that no surviving text dares to describe. One god holds a griffin's head, carefully attaching it to the body of a lion, while another works with sacred tools, stitching wings with threads of lightning. Mythologist Dr. Anya Sharma observes that this scene provides a revolutionary, almost industrial view of mythic creation, a stark contrast to the tales of spontaneous generation found in the official texts. The carving lays out the entire assembly line of legend. We see a section where wings are forged in basins of celestial fire, hammered into shape on anvils of starlight. Another panel shows deities chanting over inert forms, their mouths open in silent song, using enchanted words to breathe life into the assembled creatures. There is even a testing arena where newly completed beasts are examined for their ferocity and loyalty, with discarded, failed forms lying broken at the edges of the scene. The tools themselves are objects of wonder, not hammers and tongs, but crystalline resonators that shape energy and flowstone chisels that carve spirit into matter. The materials are sourced from the most remote corners of the mythic world: feathers from the storm phoenix, scales from the primordial serpent, and sinew from the earth-shaking behemoth. Scattered folklore sometimes hints at such places, old wives' tales about a valley where monsters are born, but they never approach the vivid, technical detail shown here. Why would the keepers of written myths omit such a fascinating and vivid process? The answer may lie in the nature of mystery itself. A spontaneous, magical creation is awe-inspiring and beyond human comprehension. Showing the gods as divine artisans following steps and procedures makes their power feel more accessible, more understandable, and perhaps less sacred. This fifth echo does more than show us how a griffin was made. It reveals that the origins of these legendary beasts were as complex and deliberate as the legends they would eventually inhabit. While the gods forged monsters in their celestial workshop, the people below were engaged in a ritual of their own profound magic. A sixth echo, carved into a sun-warmed clay frieze, reveals the unwritten ritual of seasonal renewal. Here, an entire community gathers not in a grand temple, but in a blossoming field, performing a ceremony to coax life back into the world each spring. Their synchronized dance around a central, flowering tree is a prayer in motion, a vital act of partnership with the earth that every official seasonal myth completely ignores. The villagers offer baskets of selected seeds and raise their voices in unison, their songs a tangible force meant to ensure the land's fertility. Ethnobotanist Dr. Leo Grant notes that this carving captures an agrarian ritual that the scribes of myth may have deemed too common or too local for their grand narratives, despite its immense cultural importance for survival. Every element of the scene speaks to this intimate, communal effort. The dance patterns are not random, but follow specific, interlocking spirals that mirror the growth patterns of vines and the flow of water, a choreography designed to encourage the same movement in nature. Their offerings are not lavish treasures, but the first and most perfect fruits of the harvest, the initial sheaf of grain, the first ripe apple, given back to the source as a sign of gratitude and a plea for continued abundance. And the tree itself is shown responding directly to their devotion, its branches visibly unfurling new leaves and blossoms at an accelerated pace under their care. The symbols carved along the frieze border are just as telling, showing sprouting seeds, fat rain clouds, and overflowing honeycombs. Most strikingly, there are no priestly figures, no kings or intermediaries. This is a practice owned entirely by the community, where every farmer, every parent, every child had a role to play in the great cycle of rebirth. We can infer similar rites from the agricultural calendars of the time, but they lack any mythological documentation, any connection to the gods of the official pantheon. What does this profound omission tell us about what was considered myth-worthy by the ancient record keepers? It suggests a clear hierarchy of storytelling. The epic tales of cosmic battles and divine intrigues were written for the ages, while these quiet, life-sustaining ceremonies were the living, breathing mythology of the people, preserved not on parchment, but in the very soil they tended and the clay that captured their hope. A stone panel hidden for centuries shows a council unlike any other. In a sacred grove, the seekers of knowledge are human, but the true oracles are the animals. An owl tilts its head, imparting a silent prophecy. A serpent arranges its coils into a deliberate, cryptic pattern. A great stag dips its antlers, tracing a message in the earth. This seventh echo is the hidden council of oracle animals, a structured tradition of divination that written texts on prophecy completely erased. Historian of religion, Dr. Maria Flores observes that this artifact points to a tradition where fauna were seen as direct messengers of the divine, a belief systematically suppressed in later monotheistic records. The carving is meticulous in its detail. The humans are not in positions of authority, but sit or kneel in postures of deep listening and observation. They are not speaking, but intently interpreting the symbolic gestures of the creatures before them. One figure studies the specific flight pattern of a bird as it weaves between two trees. Another watches the path a beetle takes across a patch of sacred sand. The prophecies they receive are not grand, world-altering declarations, but practical, vital guidance for their communities concerning harvests, journeys, and personal destinies. Each animal species holds a specific domain. The owl speaks of hidden truths and secrets revealed under moonlight. The serpent offers prophecies of transformation and the cyclical nature of life and death. The stag provides omens related to leadership, territory, and the health of the land itself. The setting itself is ceremonial, a designated space where the boundary between the human and natural worlds grew thin, allowing for this direct communication. We find faint whispers of this in scattered folktales, stories of a fox that gave advice or a raven that warned of danger. But these are isolated incidents, never the organized, reverent council shown here. So why was such a profound and structured system of wisdom erased from the official records? The answer lies in control. Organized religions that centralized power around a single divine voice could not tolerate a world where prophecy bubbled up from a fox, a snake, or a stag. It was a belief system that was inherently decentralized, wild, and accessible to anyone who knew how to listen to the grove. This seventh echo reveals a humbler, more intimate path to knowledge, one where humans understood they were not the sole possessors of wisdom, but participants in a vast, living conversation. Within a sacred chamber carved from moonstone, the eighth echo reveals a celestial workshop dedicated entirely to the crafting of dreams. Here, night deities are not distant observers of slumber, but master artisans seated at immense, ethereal looms. Their divine hands weave intricate tapestries from shimmering threads of starlight, fragments of human memory, and the silken strands of hope and fear. One neurologist, Dr. Felix Reed, explains that this scene fundamentally reshapes our understanding, suggesting dreams were seen as tangible, constructed realities, not just the random firings of a sleeping brain, a concept completely lost in later textual simplifications. The artifact is a detailed blueprint of this forgotten art. We see different looms for different types of dreams. Prophetic dreams are woven with golden threads of potential futures and silver filaments of celestial alignment, their patterns complex and full of symbolic imagery. Healing dreams use soft, verdant green threads imbued with calming energies, designed to soothe a troubled spirit. Warning dreams are a stark contrast, woven with coarse, dark fibers and jagged, unsettling patterns meant to jolt the dreamer into awareness. The deities work collaboratively, passing spools of emotion and memory between them, their focus absolute. Their tools are as fascinating as their creations, not simple shuttles, but resonating crystals that hum with specific intentions and needles made from solidified moonlight. The sources of their threads are just as carefully depicted. Spools of starlight are gathered from specific constellations, while memories are drawn from glowing pools that reflect countless human faces. We see deities carefully selecting a thread of joyful recollection from one pool and a strand of ancient fear from another, blending them to create a dream of nuanced emotion. Isolated folk traditions sometimes speak of the weavers of the night, but none possess the systematic, artistic detail of this carving. So why would such a profound and beautiful explanation for our dreams be omitted from the written myths? The process was likely too abstract, too deeply personal, and too reliant on visual metaphor to be confined to linear text. It was an art form, best understood through the image of the loom and the weaver. This eighth echo does not just show us gods making dreams. It shows us a universe where our most private inner worlds were considered worthy of divine craftsmanship. Each night a gift meticulously woven from the very fabric of the cosmos. A great stone river of people flows across a canyon wall, a ninth echo of an unrecorded migration. This is not a simple journey, but an epic exodus of entire tribes led by legendary heroes toward a promised land, an event celebrated in stone but suspiciously absent from every written migration epic. The relief shows them moving through a mythic geography, shielded from the desert sun by a perpetually moving cloud and crossing obstacles as rivers part before their advance. Archaeologist Dr. Hannah Lee explains that this carving fills a profound gap in oral traditions about ancestral journeys, offering undeniable visual evidence of the routes they took and the supernatural challenges they faced, details completely missing from the texts. We can see the travelers themselves, their attire distinct from any known historical culture, woven with patterns that seem to shift and change, perhaps indicating different clans or social roles. They lead herds of unusual livestock, creatures with spiraled horns and coats that shimmer even in the stone, suggesting these were animals adapted to a magical landscape. Their guides are not just the stars but the land itself. A mountain in the distance has a face carved into its peak, its mouth open as if speaking direction to the leaders. Ethereal spirit forms, wisps of light in the shape of eagles and wolves, fly alongside the column, scouting the path ahead. The celestial signs they follow are equally explicit, with constellations carved as arrows pointing their way and a second, smaller moon hanging in the sky, a celestial body not mentioned in any astronomical record. We find faint traces of this in scattered genealogies that mention a great crossing or a walking under a friendly sky, but these fragments lack all the rich narrative detail shown here. Why would such a significant foundational event be systematically left out of the written histories? The answer likely lies in its perceived nature. To later, more centralized powers, this migration may have been considered too localized, the stuff of tribal myth, or its magical elements were deemed too fantastical for the official, sanitized chronicles they wished to create. This ninth echo is more than a forgotten route. It is a visual saga of movement and survival, a testament to the magical realism that once defined ancient diasporas, enriching our understanding of how people truly believed they found their way home. A weathered stone altar depicts a silent conversation between worlds. This 10th echo is the secret language of elemental spirits, a system of communication where humans learn to speak with the very essence of nature. In the carving, a group of initiates stands before manifestations of wind, water, and stone, their bodies poised not in prayer but in active listening and mimicry. One figure tilts her head, her hand cupping her ear as she deciphers a message in the rustling of leaves. Another mirrors the sinuous, flowing pattern of a nearby stream with his hands, his gestures forming a reply. This is a dialogue built from the raw materials of the world, a linguistic myth you will not find in any written grammar. Linguist Dr. Omar Patel explains that this artifact implies ancient people believed in a universal language embedded in nature itself, a profound idea that later texts often reduce to a mere metaphor. The inscription is a detailed lexicon of this lost communication. We can see the specific symbols assigned to different elements. Patterns of concentric circles represent water, from a single drop to a roaring waterfall. Jagged, intersecting lines signify the voice of the earth, speaking through tremors and the shifting of stones. For the wind, a series of delicate, curling lines of varying thickness show the difference between a gentle breeze carrying a warning and a gale force shouting a command. The contexts for these exchanges are just as clear. A farmer consults a whispering spirit of the air to learn the coming season's weather, his posture one of deep concentration. A traveler traces the path of a subterranean spring on a rock face, asking the spirit of the stone for safe passage and fresh water. The benefits of this fluency were immediate and vital, enabling communities to predict storms, locate hidden aquifers, and understand the health of the land through its own elemental vocabulary. Scattered folklore sometimes touches on this, with tales of shepherds who understood the speech of the wind or miners who listened to the songs of the rock. But these stories lack the systematic, almost grammatical depiction shown here. So why was this entire language, this fundamental connection to the world, not preserved in the written records? The answer is as profound as the language itself. It was experiential, not textual. You could not capture the true meaning of a river's flow or a mountain's rumble with static ink on a page. It was a living dialogue that required being present in the world, feeling its rhythms and responding in kind. This 10th echo uncovers a form of intelligence that connected humanity directly with the sentient environment, a partnership spoken not in words but in the shared breath of the earth. A clay disc no larger than a hand's breadth holds the memory of a festival that pulsed with the rhythm of the cosmos itself. This 11th echo is the forgotten festival of cosmic alignment, a celebration where entire communities gathered not for a harvest or a solstice, but to honor the precise, breathtaking moment when planets danced into a unique celestial formation. The scene is one of orchestrated wonder. People are carved mid-dance, their bodies moving in complex, interlocking spirals that unmistakably mimic the orbital paths of the worlds above them. Their movements are not random ecstasy but a choreographed ritual, a physical prayer designed to harness the energy of this rare alignment. Astronomer Dr. Chloe Zhang points out that this artifact reveals an advanced, practical understanding of planetary cycles, a knowledge that later written texts simplified into vague, generalized festivals for the sun and moon. Every detail of the scene is astronomically precise. We see multiple altars, each one carefully oriented toward the position of a specific planet in the night sky. The offerings placed upon them are just as distinct, a unique item for each celestial body, perhaps a metallic ore for the red planet or a luminous pearl for the shimmering evening star. The participants themselves are divided by age, each group playing a vital role. The elders, their faces upturned, read the final, exact moment of alignment from intricate star charts held in their hands. The adults perform the energetic dances of the orbits, their steps mapping out gravitational pulls and celestial speeds, and the children, holding small, resonant instruments, create a high-pitched, chiming music meant to harmonize with the perceived music of the spheres. We can infer similar celebrations from the alignments of certain stone circles, but those silent stones lack the vivid story told here. So why would such a sophisticated, community-wide event vanish from the written calendar myths? The answer lies in the march of standardization. As empires grew and official calendars were created to unify vast territories, these hyper-specific, locally observed celestial events were smoothed over. A festival tied to a once-in-a-generation planetary alignment was impractical for a sprawling kingdom, so it was erased, replaced by simpler, more predictable annual holidays. This 11th echo reminds us that our ancestors did not just watch the sky, they danced with it, their most sacred celebrations timed to the grand, silent clockwork of the universe. The very stone of the mountain seems to ripple around them, solid rock flowing like water under the guidance of an impossible melody. This 12th echo unveils the unwritten legend of the stone singers, a race of beings whose voices could sculpt the earth itself. A breathtaking relief shows them not as gods or giants, but as slender figures with distended throat sacs, their mouths open in silent song. From their lips pour visible, swirling patterns of harmonic force, carving new valleys and raising peaks from the flat bedrock. Geomythologist Dr. Rajiv Mehta interprets this scene as evidence of a profound belief that specific sonic vibrations could physically reshape the planet, a concept later scribes may have dismissed as pure fantasy. The carving is a detailed manual of this lost art. We see different songs for different purposes. A low, droning chant causes the ground to swell upward, forming the gentle slopes of a foothill. A sharp, staccato series of notes chips and fractures stone, creating jagged cliff faces and deep ravines. A flowing, lyrical melody coaxes the rock into smooth, rolling hills and wide, fertile basins. The singers themselves are depicted with unique physical adaptations, their chests broad to hold immense lung capacity and their fingers often resting on their throats, seemingly fine-tuning the pitch. They employ natural tools as vocal amplifiers, standing within stone circles that focus their sound or singing into great, horn-like flowers that grow from the rock, channeling their voices into a concentrated beam of creative force. The landscape responds in real time, the stone visibly softening and becoming malleable under the correct frequency, then resetting into its new, permanent form once the song concludes. Isolated indigenous tales sometimes speak of the old ones who sang the world into being, but these stories lack the intricate, almost technical detail shown here. So why was this magnificent legend, this direct fusion of myth and geology, left out of the written creation stories? The answer lies in the nature of understanding. To later, more literal minds, the idea of singing a canyon into existence was a metaphor for the slow, patient work of wind and water. They could not accept the carving as a record of literal truth. This 12th echo, however, insists on a world where the border between music and mountain did not exist, where the planet itself was a grand instrument waiting for the right song to play it into shape. Beneath the painted waves of a stone panel, an entire civilization thrives in the silent depths. This 13th echo reveals the hidden history of underwater cities, magnificent metropolises built by merfolk and water deities, their existence chronicled in carvings yet dismissed as mere allegory in every written oceanic myth. The scene is one of stunning urban detail, a far cry from the vague sunken kingdoms of legend. coral spirals into elegant towers, and gates of immense, glowing pearls mark the entrances to grand plazas. The inhabitants are hybrid beings. Their forms a graceful fusion of human and aquatic life, with gills fluttering on their necks and webbed hands adeptly manipulating their environment. Marine archaeologist Dr. Isabel Roy confirms that this carving provides tangible evidence of a submerged civilization that texts often treat as a simple metaphor for the terrifying unknown of the deep. We see their daily life unfolding with remarkable clarity. Farmers tend to vast, cultivated fields of kelp, harvesting the fronds with tools made of sharpened whalebone. In a designated market area, traders exchange luminescent jewels and rare, deep-sea minerals with cautious surface dwellers who have arrived in specialized, bubble-encased vessels. Most striking is a ritual to calm a sea storm, where a circle of merfolk raise crystalline staffs that channel energy upward. Their collective will visibly smoothing the chaotic waves depicted above them into a gentle swell. The city's layout is a marvel of hydrodynamic engineering, with domed structures designed to withstand immense pressure and open forums where currents are harnessed for transit and power. Their technology is intrinsically linked to the sea itself, using bioluminescent algae for light, training great rays and dolphins as beasts of burden, and forging tools in geothermal vents. We can find a faint, distorted reflection of this in universal flood myths, but those stories speak only of destruction and loss, never of the vibrant, complex societies that might have continued below. Why were these magnificent cities not documented in the written records? The most likely reason is also the simplest, profound inaccessibility. Land-based scribes bound to their desks and temples could not venture into the abyss to verify these tales. The ocean floor was a realm of pure imagination to them, a blank space on the map where they projected monsters and mysteries, but never could they conceive of the bustling, organized life this carving so confidently portrays. This echo does not just show us a sunken city, it submerges us in a complete world, a testament to the mythologies that flourished in the places human eyes could never see. A diviner kneels in a chamber of pure white stone, her focus locked not on entrails or stars, but on the delicate darkness dancing before her. This is the 14th echo, the lost practice of shadow reading, a form of prophecy where the future was deciphered from the silent language of shadows cast by sacred objects. A detailed clay figurine captures this ephemeral art, showing a seer intently studying the silhouette of a ritual item, a shape that twists into a clear symbol of a coming famine or a journey across the sea. Divination expert Dr. Aaron Kim explains that this artifact points to a tactile form of fortune-telling that relied entirely on the interplay of light and object, a subtle method completely overlooked in the written records in favor of more dramatic omens like thunderbolts or eclipses. The carving itself serves as a meticulous guide to this forgotten discipline. It specifies the types of objects used, each chosen for its symbolic resonance: a polished obsidian mirror for matters of truth, a woven basket for community welfare, a carved animal fetish for personal destiny. The time of day was absolutely critical, with readings only conducted during the specific, fleeting moments of dawn or dusk, when the angle of the sun produced the longest, most defined, and most spiritually charged shadows. The interpretation was a complex science of shape and suggestion. A shadow that branched like a tree might predict a family's growth, while one that fractured into sharp angles could warn of conflict or a shattered alliance. The figurine even shows a reference chart beside the seer, a stone tablet etched with common shadow patterns and their meanings, a permanent record of a transient art. We find hints of this in other cultures where shadow puppetry was used in storytelling, but never as the systematic, oracular practice depicted here. So why was such a profound and widespread method never written down? The answer is in its very nature. A shadow is the most temporary of things, vanishing with a shift in the light. How could you capture its specific, nuanced form in permanent ink? The scribes who recorded prophecy sought enduring truths, but the shadow readers understood that the future itself is fluid, best read in the momentary, living darkness rather than the fixed certainty of a page. This 14th echo reveals a world where prophecy was not a shout from the heavens, but a whisper written in light and void, a subtle art that connected the solid physicality of an object to the infinite possibilities of the mystical unknown. A massive stone bridge arcs between two mountain peaks, its impossible architecture forged from an unrecorded alliance. This 15th echo reveals a pact of pure collaboration, where giants and dwarves worked in concert to build legendary structures, a cooperation that written myths fixated on conflict completely ignore. A sprawling relief shows these beings not as rivals but as partners, their distinct strengths perfectly synchronized. Giants, with their immense physical power, are depicted lifting colossal foundation stones into place, their faces etched with concentration rather than rage. Beside them, dwarven craftsmen swarm over the stone, their fine tools carving impossible filigree and mechanical locking mechanisms into the rock. Mythologist Dr. Lena Volkova observes that this scene fundamentally challenges the typical narratives of eternal rivalry, showing that collaboration was a vital, often overlooked engine of mythic world building. The carving details specific, joint projects that seem to defy logic. One panel shows the construction of a subterranean city, where giants excavate vast caverns with their bare hands, while dwarves simultaneously reinforce the ceilings with elegant, load-bearing pillars and install complex hydraulic systems to channel underground rivers. Another section depicts the forging of a legendary gate, with a giant carefully holding a white-hot metal slab steady while a team of dwarves uses coordinated hammer strikes to fold enchantments directly into the molten material. The exchange of resources is explicit, giants offering rare minerals mined from the highest crags and dwarves providing refined alloys and gemstones that focus magical energy. The division of labor is a masterpiece of efficiency, with each species performing the tasks for which they are uniquely suited. Their celebration upon a project's completion, a shared feast depicted with both species mingling freely. Scattered folktales sometimes whisper of a single bridge built by a friendly giant, but they never capture the systemic, large-scale industrial partnership shown here. So why did the written texts consistently emphasize conflict and war between these peoples over this harmonious cooperation? The answer likely lies in the nature of the stories scribes were hired to tell. Tales of battle and rivalry are dramatic, teaching clear moral lessons about strength and caution. Stories of peaceful, productive collaboration, while foundational to civilization, lack the same inherent drama for an epic poem. This 15th echo uncovers a more nuanced truth, a harmonious side of mythology where diversity was not a source of strife, but the very key to achieving collective greatness, proving that the most enduring legends were sometimes built not by a single hero, but by the joined hands of ancient opposites. A priest stands on a high ziggurat, his arms raised not in prayer but in precise physical labor. He holds a crystalline vessel aloft, its facets carved to catch and contain the faint glow of a distant star. This 16th echo reveals the secret ceremony of starlight harvesting, a literal gathering of celestial energy for earthly use, a ritual you will not find in any written astronomical myth. The carving on a weathered stone altar shows a row of figures, each with a uniquely shaped container, positioned under a sky mapped with specific constellations. Their mouths are open in synchronized chant, their bodies angled to intercept the beams of certain stars as they crest the horizon. Astroarchaeologist Dr. Samir Hassan explains that this artifact suggests a literal belief in harnessing celestial energy, which later texts may have spiritualized into abstract concepts of divine blessing, stripping away the tangible, mechanical process. The scene is a detailed procedural guide. The vessels are not simple bowls but complex geometric forms, each designed for a different type of starlight. A long, prismatic tube might be intended for the sharp, blue light of a winter star, used for its purifying properties. A spherical, multi-faceted container could be meant for the soft, golden light of a summer star, harvested for its nurturing warmth. The chants are depicted as visible, rhythmic patterns in the air around their mouths, suggesting specific sonic frequencies were believed to help coax the starlight from the sky and into the vessel. Once captured, this luminous substance was carefully decanted into sealed urns carved from obsidian or moonstone, stored in underground chambers to preserve its potency for later application. The uses were profoundly practical. In medicine, a single drop of concentrated starlight might be mixed into a poultice to heal a festering wound or cure a wasting illness. In agriculture, farmers would sprinkle water blessed with the light of specific spring stars over their fields to encourage robust growth and protect crops from blight. We can see parallels in later alchemical traditions with their quest for quintessence, but those texts lack the communal, ceremonial context shown here. This was not a solitary wizard's work, but a coordinated, seasonal effort by a dedicated priesthood. So why was such a vital, practical magic erased from the records? The knowledge was likely considered too potent, too secret, and too specialized for common consumption. It was a priestly technology protected from the uninitiated, and when that priesthood faded, the practice vanished into metaphor. This 16th echo illuminates a forgotten world where the distance between the stars and the soil was not vast, but bridged by human hands holding crystal jars, capturing the cold fire of the heavens to warm and heal the earth. A new carving shows a descent from the heavens, not of gods but of teachers. This 17th echo reveals the forgotten exodus of the Sky People, a group of celestial beings who came to Earth not to rule or to punish, but to instruct. A vast relief depicts these enigmatic figures moving among early human communities, patiently sharing the foundational pillars of civilization, agriculture, astronomy, and art, a scene of direct mentorship you will not find in any written contact myth. The visitors are not shrouded in blinding light or terrifying power, but are shown in postures of demonstration and guidance, their hands gently shaping a human's grip on a plow or pointing out a constellation's path. Anthropologist Dr. Naomi Rite observes that this carving implies a myth of cultural diffusion from above that texts may have later attributed to abstract divine intervention rather than tangible visitors. Their distinctive attire is a marvel of forgotten technology, woven from materials that shimmer like solidified cloud, with helmets that display celestial charts across their visors and tools that seem to harness energy directly from the air. The humans' reactions are captured with profound emotion, their faces a mix of intense concentration and dawning wonder as they learn to chart the seasons by the stars, mix vibrant mineral-based paints, and cultivate crops in organized rows. The duration of their stay is suggested through changing background elements, showing the same community evolving from a simple settlement to a thriving, culturally rich town under their tutelage. Communication is shown to be a blend of gesture, shared symbols carved into clay tablets, and a form of direct mental connection depicted as shimmering lines of energy between the Sky People's temples and those of their most adept students. The legacy they leave behind is explicit, not just in the knowledge but in the tools. The humans are shown continuing to use the advanced looms, astrolabes, and irrigation systems long after their mentors have ascended back into the clouds. Global stories of sky beings exist, of course, but they overwhelmingly focus on creation or punishment, lacking this specific, patient, educational focus. So why was this benevolent exodus, this narrative of galactic mentorship, systematically omitted from the written records? The most compelling reason is one of attribution. For later scribes codifying religion, attributing human advancement to flesh and blood visitors from the stars diminished the glory of the gods. It was far more powerful to claim that agriculture was a gift from a harvest deity, or that astronomy was whispered by a celestial god, than to admit humanity was taught by travelers. This 17th echo offers a humbler, more collaborative origin story, a narrative where human civilization was not simply given by the gods, but enriched through a forgotten curriculum taught under an open sky. An elder's hands cradle a softly glowing orb, pressing it gently against the forehead of a kneeling child. This 18th echo captures the hidden ritual of memory transfer, a sacred ceremony where lived experiences pass directly from one generation to the next through touch and consecrated objects. A detailed clay tablet shows this intimate exchange, a practice of tangible inheritance completely absent from the written myths of lineage and legacy. The figures are not simply speaking, they are engaged in a silent, profound transaction, with glowing spheres and inscribed stone tablets serving as the vessels for a lifetime's knowledge. Cognitive historian Dr. Illy Turner explains that this artifact reveals a literal belief in memory as a substance that could be preserved and transferred, a concept later texts would reduce to the simple metaphor of oral tradition. The carving meticulously outlines the entire ritual. We see the initial preparation where elders meditate over the objects, their hands channeling energy as specific memories, a successful hunt, the song for a drought-ending rain, the feeling of holding a firstborn child, are drawn from their minds and solidified into light. The ritual words spoken are not prayers but precise keys, carved as symbols flowing from the elder's mouth to unlock the memory within the object for the receiver. The absorption process is depicted with visceral clarity, the recipient's body often shuddering as the new memories integrate, their eyes wide with the vision of events they never personally witnessed. The types of memories chosen for this transfer were critical for survival and identity. Technical skills, like the exact method for forging a unique alloy or navigating by a forgotten star pattern, were paramount. So too were emotional memories, the collective grief of a great loss or the shared joy of a historic victory, ensuring the community's emotional core remained intact. Elaborate safeguards against loss are also shown, with duplicate memory orbs stored in hidden, protected vaults, and specific family members assigned as living archivists, their sole duty to protect and perform this transfer. We can see a faint shadow of this in ancestor veneration practices, where names and deeds are recalled, but they lack the direct sensory immersion of this ritual. So why was such a vital engine of cultural continuity never written down? The answer is in its deeply personal, experiential nature. You cannot capture the taste of a remembered meal, the chill of a long-past winter, or the warmth of a lost embrace in ink on a page. This was knowledge felt in the bones and seen behind the eyes, a silent conversation between generations that trusted the human vessel more than the fragile scroll. This 18th echo reveals a world where history was not a story to be told, but a life to be relived, ensuring that the most precious knowledge never faced the slow erosion of forgetfulness. A stone map depicts coastlines that refuse to stay still. This 19th echo reveals the unwritten saga of the wandering islands, land masses that drifted across the oceans, guided by the whims of sea deities or ancient magical currents. Their epic journeys are charted in carvings with dotted trails flowing over the waves, yet you will find no trace of them in the formal navigational myths or charts of the ancient world. The map shows specific encounters where the paths of these migratory islands intersect with the routes of stunned sailors, their small ships dwarfed by the approaching shores. Oceanographer Dr. Ben Carter remarks that this carving suggests a mythological explanation for shifting landmasses that texts may have ignored as superstition. Each island possesses a unique identity and a reason for its endless voyage. One might be a floating garden, its back covered in bioluminescent fungi and trees with silver bark, moving to follow a single wandering star. Another could be a jagged peak of obsidian, home to a reclusive order of monks who believe their pilgrimage is to carry a sacred relic across the sea, never allowing it to rest. The inhabitants are adapted to this perpetual motion, building flexible homes from woven kelp and learning to read the ocean's moods for signs of an imminent departure. Predicting their location was a sacred science. Sailors looked for specific signs, a certain formation of clouds that clung to an island's summit even when it was over the horizon, or the behavior of pilot whales that would change their songs when a wandering landmass was near. The marine life around them was just as unique, with symbiotic creatures like barnacles that fed on the island's mineral-rich roots and schools of fish that navigated by the island's own magnetic fields. Every island had its legend. One was said to be the petrified shell of a primordial turtle, still swimming its ancient routes. Another was believed to be a piece of the moon that fell into the sea, forever trying to return to the sky. We hear whispers of these places in sailors' told tales of lands that appear and vanish in the mist, but those stories lack the cartographic certainty, the deliberate trails etched in stone. Why were these magnificent sagas never formally recorded? They were likely considered too fantastical for the serious business of cartography. Mapmakers sought fixed points and reliable coastlines, not a geography that was alive and willful. This 19th echo charts a lost world where the earth itself was a traveler, and the greatest adventures were not in finding a new land, but in finding one that had found you. High above the world, in the silent expanse where sky meets myth, a deity's hands work the heavens like soft clay. This 20th echo unveils the lost art of cloud sculpting, a breathtaking practice where the atmosphere itself became a medium for divine messages and ephemeral art. A magnificent relief shows these celestial artisans not as distant weather gods, but as master craftsmen, wielding immense tools of woven wind and focused thought to carve the clouds. They pinch and pull the vapor, shaping it into intricate symbols, fleeting portraits, and vast, temporary monuments that drift across the blue canvas. Meteorologist Dr. Chloe Zhang explains that this artifact points to a creative, intentional interaction with the atmosphere that later texts would dismiss as mere random weather patterns, stripping away the artistry. The carving is a vivid lesson in this forgotten discipline. We see the specific forms they created, from simple, universally understood symbols like a sheaf of grain for a bountiful harvest to complex, narrative scenes depicting a hero's recent victory or a warning of a distant conflict. The sculptors work with specialized tools, great fans that channel specific air currents to add detail, and crystalline lenses that focus sunlight, causing sections of the cloud to glow with symbolic color. The time of day was absolutely critical for this art. The soft, diffuse light of dawn and dusk provided the best canvas, allowing for subtle shading and depth, while the harsh noon sun was avoided for its flattening glare. The reactions of the people below are just as important as the sculptures themselves. Whole villages are shown gazing upward, their faces etched with understanding and awe as they decipher the sky-born message meant just for them. A cloud shaped like a leaping fish might send the fishermen to sea with renewed confidence, while one sculpted into a fortress wall would prompt the entire community to prepare their defenses. The materials were as transient as the art, the sculptors using nothing but the existing moisture in the air, sometimes channeling mist from waterfalls or the breath of high-flying creatures to add volume to their creations. We find hints of this in the universal practice of cloud reading, of seeing shapes in the sky, but those are passive observations, never the active, deliberate acts of creation shown here. So why was such a magnificent ability never formally documented in the weather myths? The answer is as beautiful as it is simple. A cloud sculpture is the definition of temporary. It forms, it conveys its meaning, and then it dissolves on the wind. You cannot capture its full grandeur and nuance in the static lines of a text. It was an art form that demanded to be witnessed, a conversation between the sky and the earth that lived only in the moment of its creation. This 20th echo reveals a celestial canvas where myth was not just told, but was dynamically written across the sky for all to see. A reminder that some of the most profound truths are those that gracefully accept their own impermanence. A garden of silver blooms opens its petals only to the night. This 21st echo reveals the secret history of Moonlight gardens, cultivated sanctuaries that flourished under the direct care of lunar deities, a breathtaking concept you will not find in any written botanical myth. A luminous clay panel captures this hidden world where flora does not simply reflect the moon, but actively drinks in its pale light. Flowers pulse with a soft, internal radiance, and their leaves shift in texture and hue, from shimmering silver at the new moon to a deep, velvety indigo at the full. Ethereal gardeners, their forms woven from mist and starlight, move among the beds, their touch causing the plants to release faint, chime-like sounds. Botanist Dr. Sophia Chen explains that this carving suggests a literal belief in a form of photosynthesis extended to lunar energy, a practical magic that later texts may have dismissed as mere poetic fancy. The entire life cycle of these gardens is depicted with meticulous care. Planting was a sacred act conducted only when a specific lunar phase mirrored a constellation in the night sky. The seeds themselves were not buried in soil but nestled in beds of crushed pearls and moonstone dust, and watered not with rain but with dew collected from night-blooming jasmine. The harvest was equally precise, with each part of the plant gathered at a specific phase for a specific purpose. Roots dug up during a waning moon were ground into powders for deep, restorative sleep, while petals plucked at the full moon's zenith were distilled into elixirs said to enhance intuition and dream clarity. The garden layouts are a marvel of celestial geometry, with spiraling paths that mirror the moon's orbit and reflective pools positioned to capture and amplify its glow. The tools used by the gardeners are carved from moonstone and selenite, materials believed to be naturally resonant with lunar energy. And during the full moon, the panel shows grand festivals where communities would gather not in the bright sun, but in this gentle, argent light, celebrating with music played on instruments strung with spider silk and feasts featuring food seasoned with the garden's enchanted herbs. We see a faint, fragmented reflection of this in our knowledge of night-blooming cereus or moonflowers, but these are isolated curiosities, never the organized, systematic agriculture shown here. So why was this entire history of lunar cultivation never written down? The knowledge was likely considered too niche, too specialized for the grand agricultural myths that centered on the life-giving power of the sun. It was a quieter, more intimate magic, one that thrived in the shadows of the day's dominant narratives. This 21st echo cultivates a forgotten myth where the moon was not just a distant lamp, but an active, nurturing force, tending to a secret, shimmering world that awakened only when the rest of the earth was asleep. A solemn procession of villagers approaches the base of a sacred peak, their hands raised not in supplication but in a gesture of formal promise. This is the 22nd echo, the forgotten pact of silence with mountain spirits, a binding agreement where humans vowed never to disturb the high sanctuaries in exchange for protection from rockslides and storms. A weathered relief carved into a river stone shows this covenant in action, a scene of profound ecological respect that every written mountain myth of conquest and dominance completely ignores. The villagers make offerings of the purest water and the season's first grains, but these are not bribes for favor. They are symbols of the pact itself, gifts of sustenance given in recognition of the mountain's own life. In return, the spirits are depicted not as fearsome giants, but as serene guardians woven from the rock and mist, their watchful forms turning away avalanches with a gentle hand and steering lightning strikes safely into empty sky. Geologist Dr. Leo Grant states that this artifact highlights an ecological mindfulness that texts often replace with conquest narratives, a practical spirituality focused on coexistence rather than domination. The carving functions as a detailed legal and spiritual document. It explicitly outlines the terms, marking specific, forbidden zones on the mountain's face where no axe may fall and no foot may tread. The consequences of breaking this vow are just as clear, with panels showing the tragic results of a broken agreement. The same village now buried under mud and rock after a foolish attempt to mine the summit. The benefits of honoring the pact are vividly portrayed, showing the community thriving under stable, benevolent weather, their soil enriched by minerals carried down in gentle streams from the protected heights. We can identify the specific mountains involved by their unique carved profiles, peaks often known by local names that translate to the Silent One or the Watcher. The pact was not eternal, but required renewal with each generation, a ceremony where elders would lead the youth to the stone and retell the terms, ensuring the collective memory of the agreement remained fresh and binding. Scattered oral traditions sometimes mention such pacts in whispers, tales of a village spared because they left the high meadows alone, but they lack the undeniable visual proof etched here in stone. Why was this fundamental code of conduct never formally written into the mythic records? The knowledge was likely considered universal, a basic tenet of survival as obvious as breathing, not deemed worthy of the grand epics that celebrated human triumph over the wild. This 22nd echo resonates with a quiet wisdom, a testament to a time when humanity understood that some of the most powerful agreements are those made in respectful silence with the ancient, living earth. The rhythm of the year was once marked not by a calendar, but by a community's collective movement. A 23rd echo preserves the unrecorded dance of the seasons, a ritual performed to welcome each turn of the year with choreography that physically mimicked the natural world. A long frieze shows 4 distinct troupes of dancers, each embodying spring, summer, autumn, and winter, their bodies flowing through gestures that enact the sprouting of a seed, the full blaze of the sun, the falling of a leaf, and the quiet stillness of snow. They do not merely celebrate the seasons, they become them, interacting directly with symbolic elements. A dancer for spring coaxing carved stone flowers to bloom under her feet, while the dancer for winter leaves footprints of frost in the air. Cultural historian Dr. Maria Flores observes that this carving captures a performative aspect of seasonal change that texts describe only in static, abstract terms. The entire event is a sensory spectacle. The musicians play instruments crafted for the occasion, drums made of stretched hide to mimic thunder for summer, and delicate wind chimes of hollow reeds to sound the gentle breezes of spring. The costumes are transformative, woven from dyed wool and fresh greenery for spring, adorned with grains and sun-bleached bones for summer, layered with dried leaves and berries for autumn, and draped in white furs and polished ice crystals for winter. The audience is not passive. Their role is to respond with specific calls and claps at key moments, their collective energy fueling the ritual's power. The timing was everything, initiated at the precise moment of an equinox or solstice, led not by a king or high priest, but by the community's most skilled storyteller and its oldest farmer, their knowledge joined to guide the performance. The intended effects were profoundly practical, a dance to encourage timely rains, to strengthen the crops against blight, or to ensure a deep, insulating snowpack for the winter fields. We can see remnants of this in folk dances around the world that mark May Day or the harvest, but they lack the deep mythological framing, the explicit belief that human movement could directly influence the climate itself. Why was such a central, vibrant tradition never formally documented in the seasonal myths? It was a living tradition, its power residing in the act of doing, in the shared breath and synchronized steps of the people. You cannot capture the true feeling of a communal dance, the ache in the muscles and the rise of collective hope, on a static page. This 23rd echo moves us through the year with a rhythm and reverence that written words could never hold. A reminder that some of the most important agreements with nature were sealed not with a signature, but with a step. A smooth, river-worn stone glows faintly under a priest's hand, its surface humming with a message only he can hear. This 24th echo reveals the hidden language of sacred stones, a forgotten system of communication where specific rocks and crystals were consulted as oracles. A detailed carving shows a circle of seers not praying to the stone, but actively listening to it, their heads tilted as if deciphering a complex vibration or a silent song. Each figure touches a different type of mineral, and from these points of contact, the artist has carved visible waves of energy, patterns of light and sound that flow into the interpreter's bodies. Archaeocaustics expert Dr. Felix Reed states that this artifact suggests a widespread belief in a form of mineral consciousness that later written texts often dismiss as simple animism, stripping away the sophisticated linguistic structure. The carving functions as a meticulous field guide to this lost practice. It categorizes the stones by their properties, showing that basalt from volcanic flows was used for messages concerning strength and conflict, while translucent selenite was reserved for matters of intuition and dreams. The methods of interaction were just as specific. Some seers are shown pressing their foreheads directly against the stone to receive mental images, while others have their ears pressed to resonant geodes, listening for tonal shifts that correspond to specific omens. The messages received were not grand prophecies, but practical, daily guidance for the community, advising on the best time to plant crops, warning of a coming water shortage, or mediating a dispute between families by revealing a hidden truth. The locations of these stones were sacred secrets, often found in places of natural power, like the intersection of underground streams or within deep, echoing caverns where their voices were clearest. The rituals for activation were precise, involving cleansing with specific waters, anointing with rare oils, and the use of copper or crystal tuning rods to wake the stone's voice. A record keeper is always present in these scenes, meticulously carving the patterns emitted by the stone onto a clay tablet, creating a library of vibrational utterances and their meanings. We can see faint parallels in traditions like the Irish Blarney stone or the whispering galleries of ancient structures, but these lack the systematic, communicative dialogue depicted here. So why was this entire language, this direct line to the mind of the earth, never formally recorded in the lithic myths. The knowledge was likely considered too esoteric, too deeply intertwined with the personal, sensory experience of the seer. You cannot write down a vibration or capture a specific hum in ink. It was a language of feeling, a grammar of resonance that trusted the human body as its translator. This 24th echo tunes our ears to a forgotten frequency, where the very bones of the planet were not silent, but spoke in a slow, steady voice to those who knew how to listen. A river of pure time flows through the heart of the mountain, its banks not of earth, but of shifting, carved epochs. This 25th echo reveals the lost legend of the River of Time, a mythical current navigated by ancient travelers to visit the past or glimpse the future, a breathtaking concept of fluid chronology that written time myths consistently ignore. A sprawling relief shows these chrononauts in distinct crystalline vessels, their oars dipping not into water, but into the shimmering substance of history itself. One bank of the river might show a bustling Bronze Age city, while the opposite shore depicts a silent, futuristic landscape of crystalline spires, the travelers suspended between them. Historian Dr. Hannah Lee observes that this artifact implies a cyclical or fluid view of time that later texts would rigidly linearize, stripping away the navigable, almost geographical nature of history. The carving meticulously charts the river's treacherous course. We see the whirlpools of forgotten eras, swirling vortices that could trap a vessel in a loop of repeating moments. There are the rapids of accelerated time where centuries flash by in an instant, and the stagnant, marshy deltas where history seems to slow to a crawl. The chrononauts are not alone on this journey. Ethereal guides, beings woven from the threads of causality itself, stand at crucial confluences, their hands directing travelers away from paradoxes and toward stable eddies where one can safely observe. The preparation for such a journey was a ritual in itself. Travelers underwent prolonged meditation to anchor their consciousness, preventing their own memories from being washed away by the current. They carried unique artifacts as temporal ballast, objects of great personal or historical significance that kept them tethered to their point of origin. The rules of interaction were absolute and clearly depicted. A traveler could observe and collect knowledge, but the carving shows severe consequences for those who tried to remove a single pebble from the past or plant a seed in the future, their boats dissolving into the current as their own timelines unraveled. The artifacts they brought back were not gold or jewels but intangible treasures, the sheet music for a symphony never composed, the blueprint for a machine yet to be invented, or the healing recipe for a plague that would not strike for 5 generations. We find shadows of this in myths like those of the prophet who slept for centuries, but they lack the systematic, navigable geography of a river that one could deliberately sail. So why was this magnificent, complex legend never written down? The idea of a structured, traversable time was likely too philosophically dangerous, too challenging to the fixed, divinely ordained timelines that organized religions and empires relied upon. It was a mythology that gave individuals the potential to become sailors of history, a power too great to be entrusted to anything less permanent than stone. This 25th echo carries us on a current where time is not an arrow, but a destination, a vast and flowing story waiting for the right hands to steer its course. Their sanctuary was the open sky itself, a place of stone altars on high plateaus where the air was never still. This 26th echo reveals the secret cult of the Whispering Winds, a group that worshipped wind deities by learning to interpret the subtle voices carried on the breeze. A detailed stone panel shows its members not in a temple, but scattered across a windswept plain, their bodies tense with concentration. They hold strange, funnel-like devices carved from hollowed gourds and polished horn, instruments aimed at the sky to capture and amplify the faintest sighs and murmurs of the air. Their faces are turned, ears angled, as they decode these atmospheric whispers into prophecies and practical advice for their people. Linguist Dr. Omar Patel explains that this carving reveals a belief in an auditory divinity, a concept that written texts would later reduce to a mere metaphor for change or fortune, stripping away the literal voice they heard in the wind. The entire ritual is laid bare. The instruments are specialized with long, spiraling tubes designed to catch specific frequencies, from the high-pitched warning hiss of a northern gale to the low, promising hum of a southern zephyr. The seasons dictated their practice, with the whispers said to be clearest during the equinoxes, when the world hung in balance and the wind carried messages between realms. The community's most vital decisions were based on this eavesdropping on the divine. A whisper of rustling leaves might advise delaying a sea voyage, while a clear, chiming sound through a specific rock formation could signal the perfect day to plant seeds. The types of messages were categorized by tone and direction. The east wind spoke of new beginnings and distant news, its voice often fresh and sharp. The west wind carried tales of endings and introspection, its tones softer and more melancholic. The north wind's prophecies were stern, full of warnings about coming cold or conflict, while the south wind's murmur promised warmth, abundance, and healing. After a successful reading, the cult performed rituals of gratitude, offering handfuls of fine, fragrant pollen to the air, a substance light enough for the wind itself to accept and carry away. We find hints of this in universal folklore about wind omens, a sailor listening to a storm's approach or a farmer sensing a shift in the weather. But these are isolated instincts, never the organized, devotional cult with its specialized tools and structured interpretations shown here. So why was this entire religious practice never formally documented in the wind myths? It was likely too localized and too intimate. The voice of the wind is different on every hilltop and in every valley. A belief system so deeply tied to a specific place, to the unique acoustics of a particular plateau, would not translate easily to the standardized pantheons recorded by centralized temple scribes. This 26th echo lets us hear the myths that were never written, only felt on the skin and captured in the silent language of clay, a reminder that some of the oldest gods spoke in a language of breath and quiet sound. Their hands did not hold ink but controlled tongues of living flame. This 27th echo unveils the forgotten art of fire writing, a sacred practice where scribes inscribed messages directly onto specially prepared surfaces using fire itself. A detailed clay tablet shows these figures not as simple priests, but as master pyrotechnicians, their fingers guiding precise jets of flame to etch glowing symbols onto slabs of treated obsidian or infused clay. The texts they created were not meant to last, their letters shimmering with intense heat before cooling into invisibility, leaving no trace behind. Pyrotechnics historian Dr. Rajiv Mehta explains that this artifact suggests an ephemeral form of communication that texts may have overlooked due to its profoundly transient nature. The carving meticulously details the entire process. The scribes used delicate, funnel-like tools made of fused quartz and bronze, designed to mix precise amounts of air and sacred oils to produce a flame of a specific color and temperature. The writing surfaces are just as specialized, sheets of mineral-rich stone that react to heat by glowing in distinct hues, a blue flame producing a white-hot script, while a cooler, yellow flame creates symbols that pulse with a deep orange light. Interpretation was a high art form, requiring the scribe to read the message not just from the symbol's shape, but from its color, its intensity, and even the speed at which it faded. The occasions for its use were momentous and urgent. This was the method for conveying immediate, direct mandates from the gods, a celestial alert system for impending natural disasters, divine verdicts in tribal disputes, or last-minute alterations to a prophesied destiny. The training was grueling, requiring years to master the control of breath and flame, to learn the complex correspondence between fire color and divine intent, and to develop the mental discipline to receive and transcribe a message in a single, continuous flow of energy. We see faint, distorted reflections of this in rituals involving sacred bonfires or the reading of candle flames, but these are pale echoes, never the structured, linguistic system depicted here. So why was an art of such profound importance never once written about in the myths of writing or communication? The answer is as elegant as it is absolute. Fire writing, by its very design, left no permanent trace. It was a dialogue written in the moment, for the moment, its truth existing only in the space between the scribe's hand and the god's will, witnessed by those present and then vanishing like breath on a cold morning. This 27th echo illuminates a world where the most urgent conversations between mortals and divinities were conducted in a language of beautiful, temporary fire. Beneath the familiar surface world, entire empires thrived in the perpetual twilight of a subterranean realm. This 28th echo uncovers the unwritten chronicle of these underground kingdoms, their complex societies preserved in sprawling reliefs that defy every underworld myth of a hellish or primitive abyss. The carving reveals a breathtaking vertical metropolis, its architecture carved directly into the walls of a colossal cavern. Tiered cities are connected by delicate bridges of crystal and stone, with dwellings shaped like glowing fungi and communal halls that spiral like ancient ammonites. The inhabitants are depicted as a distinct people, their forms adapted perfectly to the dark, with large, luminous eyes that gather the faintest light and skin patterned like the very stone they call home. Subterranean archaeologist Dr. Isabel Roy notes that this carving provides a glimpse into a chthonic civilization that texts often stereotype as hellish or primitive. Their society is shown in stunning detail, a world of profound order and innovation. Vast mining operations delve even deeper, where workers extract not just precious metals, but strange, energy-rich crystals that pulse with an internal fire. There are scenes of formal diplomacy with surface dwellers, caravans of traders meeting in neutral caves to exchange subterranean minerals for surface world grains and textiles, suggesting a relationship of mutual benefit, not fear. The kingdom's governance is clear, ruled by a council of elders who read the resonant frequencies of the planet's core to make their laws. The resources they value most are not gold, but geothermal energy, which they harness through intricate networks of pipes and channels, powering their cities and fueling their most sacred rituals. These ceremonies take place around vents of superheated steam, where priests channel the earth's raw power into light, warmth, and what appears to be a form of deep earth communication. The myths they themselves believe are carved in dedicated sanctuaries, telling of a great world tree whose roots are their sky and whose health directly affects their own survival. Global underworld tales exist, of course, but they are almost universally focused on punishment and dread, lacking all the societal detail, the culture, and the quiet dignity shown here. Why were these rich chronicles never formally recorded by surface scribes? These kingdoms were simply too fantastical, too physically inaccessible to be considered anything more than legend. The surface world could not verify their existence, so their vibrant, complex reality was reduced to a simple metaphor for death and the unknown. This 28th echo does not reveal an underworld of torment, but a parallel world of life, a testament to the civilizations that flourished in the deep, silent heart of the earth. A figure stands poised in a chamber of polished obsidian, their own darkness stretching and coiling into a sentient shape before them. This 29th echo reveals the hidden practice of shadow bonding, a ritual where individuals forged a conscious connection with their own silhouettes to gain strength and insight, a deeply personal discipline absent from every written myth of the self. A detailed clay figurine captures the moment of fusion, showing a person's form half-merged with their shadow, the darkness taking on distinct, expressive features of its own, an entity now separate yet intrinsically linked. Psychologist Dr. Aaron Kim explains that this artifact points to an ancient belief in the shadow as a distinct, conscious aspect of the self, a concept that written texts would only much later integrate into abstract psychological theory, stripping away the tangible, ritualistic process. The carving meticulously outlines the steps of this profound bonding. The aspirant first undergoes a prolonged fast and meditation in absolute darkness, learning to perceive their shadow not as an absence of light, but as a palpable presence. The ritual itself takes place only during the brief, balanced moments of dawn or dusk, when the sun's low angle casts the longest, most defined shadows and the boundary between worlds is believed to be thinnest. The primary tool is a vast, perfectly reflective surface of obsidian or still water, used not for vanity, but as a gateway to facilitate the initial eye contact and eventual handshake between the person and their dark twin. The benefits of a successful bond were transformative. The individual gained a tangible enhancement of intuition, their shadow often twitching or gesturing to warn of unseen dangers or hidden truths. Physical strength and stamina were believed to be shared between the pair, and the shadow could be sent on short errands into the spirit world to gather information or deliver messages. But the risks were severe and clearly depicted. A bond broken through fear or doubt could lead to a catastrophic shadow loss, leaving the person spiritually hollow, perpetually cold, and vulnerable to possession by wandering spirits. The community's role was vital as they formally recognized and celebrated these bonded pairs, the individual and their shadow often receiving matching symbolic tattoos or marks of honor, acknowledging them as a complete and powerful whole. We see a faint clinical reflection of this in modern therapeutic shadow work, but it lacks the ceremonial depth, the shared existence, and the communal validation shown here. So why was such a profound exploration of the self never written into the mythological records? The practice was simply too personal, too internal, and too visual to be confined to text. You cannot capture the feeling of your own darkness squeezing your hand in reassurance, or the sight of it standing guard while you sleep with mere words on a page. It was a knowledge felt in the silence between heartbeats, a partnership witnessed not by scribes, but by the walls of a dark chamber and the faithful clay that remembered. Their looms were the very frame of the sky, their shuttles passing threads of pure light through the warp of reality. This 30th echo reveals the lost tale of the celestial weavers, goddesses who actively crafted the fabric of the heavens, a story of meticulous creation carved in stone but entirely omitted from the written cosmic myths. A breathtaking relief shows these divine artisans at immense cosmic looms, their hands moving with fluid grace as they draw threads of starlight and nebulous vapor to form new constellations and weather patterns. Each pull of the shuttle weaves a new star into the black velvet of night, while a different tension in the thread might spin out the delicate cirrus clouds of a summer afternoon or the dense, rain-heavy nimbus of a coming storm. Astronomer Dr. Samir Hassan remarks that this carving embodies a creative cosmology where the universe is continually crafted, not just existent, a perspective that later texts often took for granted, stripping away the active, artistic process. The materials they use are as extraordinary as their creations. Spools of comet tail provide silvery, streaking threads for meteor showers. balls of condensed solar plasma glow with golden light, reserved for weaving the very suns themselves. They even use spindles of gravitational force to pull the threads taut, creating the orbits that hold the celestial bodies in their perfect, balanced dance. The patterns they weave are a complex language with specific geometric designs dictating a season's temperament, the path of a planet, or the birth of a new star cluster. Their interactions with other deities are not of command, but of collaboration. A sky god might request a specific constellation to honor a fallen hero, and the weavers would consult their charts to find the right blend of light and space to fulfill the request. The looms themselves are architectural marvels, their frames carved from the bones of ancient, extinct stars, and their pedals forged from the resonant heart of planets. The timing of their sessions dictates the rhythm of the cosmos, with grand weaving undertaken during celestial alignments and more delicate repair work conducted during the quiet periods between eclipses. The effects on the mortal realm are direct and tangible. A dropped thread might manifest as a shooting star, while a deliberately tangled pattern in the cloud weave could send a week of unseasonable rain to a parched land. Why would such a vivid, beautiful explanation for the sky's wonders be left out of the written records? The process was likely considered too detailed, too mechanical for the grand narratives of Genesis. A universe that simply was by divine fiat was more awe-inspiring than one that required maintenance and artistic effort. This 30th echo weaves a forgotten tapestry of creation, one that intimately connects the daily weather and the nightly stars to the diligent, loving hands of the weavers at their looms. Their ears were pressed not to shells but to the rough bark of ancient oaks, listening for a voice in the rustle of leaves. This 31st echo reveals the secret rite of the talking trees, a ceremony where entire forests offered counsel directly to those who knew how to ask, a profound dialogue carved in stone but completely absent from the written arboreal myths. A weathered stone panel shows figures in postures of deep reverence, their bodies leaning against massive trunks, with carved scrolls flowing from the tree's canopy to the human's ear, illustrating a clear and direct exchange of wisdom. Dendrologist Dr. Naomi Rite explains that this artifact suggests a literal, animistic belief in communication with flora that later texts would reduce to mere symbolism or poetic metaphor, stripping away the tangible conversation. The carving functions as a meticulous guide to this lost practice. It specifies the types of trees involved and their unique domains of knowledge. The steadfast oak was consulted on matters of law, leadership, and long-term survival, its deep roots believed to hold the memory of the land itself. The willow, with its graceful, flowing branches, offered guidance on emotion, healing, and navigating the currents of grief or love. The carving even shows a figure listening to a fruit tree, its advice pertaining to community health and the cycles of abundance. The questions asked were of vital importance, from a community leader seeking approval for a new law to a heartbroken individual asking for solace. The tree's answers were not spoken in human words, but interpreted through a complex language of nature. A sudden shift in the pattern of leaf shadows might form a symbolic image. A specific sequence of creaks and groans in the wind could be deciphered as a clear warning or affirmation. The falling of a particular branch at a precise moment was read as an unequivocal omen. The timing of these consultations was absolutely critical, conducted only during the liminal hours of dawn or dusk, or under the full moon, when the veil between the human and plant worlds was believed to be thinnest. The offerings made were not grand sacrifices, but gifts of pure intention, water drawn from a sacred spring poured at the roots, or a song sung solely for that tree to honor its spirit. A record keeper is always present in these scenes, etching the interpreted wisdom onto clay tablets, creating a living library of arboreal advice that guided generations. We see a faint shadow of this in common tree lore, in the universal feeling of peace in an old forest, but these instincts lack the structured, reverent, and interactive ceremony depicted here. So why was this entire rite, this direct line to the wisdom of the woods, never formally written down? The knowledge was inherently experiential. You could not capture the specific feeling of bark under your palm, the unique scent of the tree, or the subtle, intuitive understanding that passed between listener and trunk in the static symbols of text. It was a quiet, personal connection that thrived in the sacred space between a question asked and an answer felt, a partnership that trusted the silent language of the forest more than the loud permanence of the written word. This 31st echo listens to the deep, slow wisdom of the world, a testament to a time when humanity knew that some of the greatest truths were not shouted from mountaintops, but whispered on the wind through a billion leaves. A streak of light in the night sky was not a falling rock, but a descending teacher. This 30-second echo reveals the forgotten migration of the Starfall beings, entities who plummeted from the cosmos to Earth, bringing profound gifts of knowledge and art, an event meticulously carved in stone yet completely absent from the written myths of meteors and comets. A sprawling relief shows their gentle landing, their forms cushioned by spheres of soft, glowing energy as they step onto the soil to be greeted not with fear, but with open-handed curiosity by early humans. Astrobiologist Dr. Ili Turner states that this carving implies a panspermia-like myth where life or culture comes from space, an idea later texts may have spiritualized into abstract divine intervention. The Starfall beings possess a distinct, elegant physiology, with slender limbs, large eyes adapted to perceiving multiple spectra of light, and skin that seems to be embedded with a faint, shifting star chart. The gifts they bring are not weapons or threats, but tools for enlightenment. They hold up crystalline data repositories that project three-dimensional schematics for advanced irrigation systems, musical instruments that produce harmonies based on mathematical constants, and looms that weave fabric from captured sunlight. Their integration into human societies is depicted with touching detail. They are shown living in simple, round homes built alongside human dwellings, sharing meals, and participating in community life. The landing sites themselves become sacred, marked by circles of strange, bluish grass that grows nowhere else on Earth, and by standing stones that hum with a low, resonant frequency. The languages they teach are a blend of complex gesture and tonal sound, a form of communication that allows for the expression of abstract concepts about time, light, and cosmic connection. The legends that arise from their visits are specific and enduring, tales of the Starwalkers who taught the people to read the true language of the seasons in the soil and the stars, and who gifted them the first seeds for a grain that could grow in near total darkness. Global star myths exist, of course, speaking of gods in chariots or celestial messengers, but they universally lack this migratory detail, this sense of a prolonged, peaceful cultural exchange. Why was this foundational narrative of cosmic immigration never formally written about? The most likely reason is one of conflation. To later scribes, the idea of knowledgeable beings coming from the sky fit too neatly into the established template of a god's descent from the heavens. The nuanced, collaborative story of the Starfall beings was absorbed and simplified, their identities blurred into the general pantheon of sky deities, their tangible gifts transformed into metaphorical divine blessings. This 30-second echo stars a humble narrative of cosmic visitors, a forgotten thread in our mythology that suggests we were not alone in the universe, but were once students in a silent, star-lit classroom. The final echo is not a grand event but a quiet, meticulous craft. In a chamber lit by the soft glow of oil lamps, artisans work with tools of polished bone and crystal, carving memories directly into stone. They are not depicting scenes they witnessed, but etching experiences passed down through generations, events so vital they dared not trust them to fragile parchment alone. Their hands move with a focused intensity, for they are not simply carving images, they are imbuing the very stone with the essence of the memory itself, the joy of a coronation, the sorrow of a great flood, the collective hope of a spring ritual. Memory scholar Dr. Lena Volkova notes that this artifact reveals a tactile historiography that texts complement but cannot replace. The process begins with a sacred selection. The community's elders gather to decide which memory is precious enough, which story is true enough to be granted the permanence of stone. Once chosen, the memory is not just told but performed for the carver, a full reenactment of the event with its original emotions, its specific sounds and scents, all meant to saturate the artisan's spirit before a single mark is made. The materials themselves are part of the magic. The stone is chosen for its resonance, a specific quarry known for holding sonic vibrations, or the clay is mixed with the ashes of a sacred fire and the tears of those who first lived the memory. The carving tools are equally specialized, not chisels for shaping, but needles for inscribing, designed to trace the emotional contours of the event into the medium's surface. The final, crucial step is the activation ritual. Once the carving is complete, the community gathers. The elder who provided the memory places their hands upon the finished work, and through a chant that has been lost to time, they pour the living essence of the recollection back into the stone, awakening it from a mere image into a repository. From that moment on, any member of the community could approach the stone, lay their hands upon its carved surface, and not just see the event, but feel it, experiencing the warmth of the sun on that forgotten day or the chill of the wind during that historic storm. This was history you did not read but remembered through your fingertips. We have endless oral histories, of course, stories told and retold around fires, but this was their physical counterpart, a library of emotion and experience built to withstand the erosion of time and the distortion of retelling. So why is this profound art, this very engine of cultural preservation, completely absent from the written myths about history and memory? The reason is beautifully simple. It was the documentation itself. The scribes who wrote the myths were recording one kind of truth, a linear narrative of kings and gods, but these memory carvers were preserving a different truth entirely, the truth of felt experience. They were not creating a document to be read, but a vessel to be felt, and in doing so, they became the silent, steadfast keepers of every tale the text chose to forget. The stone itself seems to hum with a silent, resonant chord. Deep within a forgotten temple, a 34th echo reveals the hidden symphony of the elements, a mythic orchestra where earth, air, fire, and water play in perfect harmony to create the very music of the world. A vast frieze shows these personified elements not at war, but as master musicians, each with an instrument crafted from their own essence. Earth pounds a drum made of tectonic plates, its beat the slow, foundational rhythm of the continents shifting. Air breathes life into a flute of hollowed hurricane, its melody the whispering breeze and the roaring gale. Water plucks the strings of a harp made from waterfall and ocean current, and fire strikes a xylophone of dancing flames, its notes the crackle of hearth and forge. They are all conducted by a cosmic figure whose baton is a beam of pure light, its gestures dictating the tempo of tides and the crescendo of storms. Musicologist Dr. Ben Carter interprets this scene as evidence of a profound belief in a universal harmony that later written texts often simplified into narratives of chaos or elemental conflict. The symphony they play is the world itself. The rhythm section is the heartbeat of the planet, the steady pulse of day and night, the slow, deep meter of geological time. The melodies are the turning seasons, a spring theme of quick, hopeful notes, a summer refrain of lush, warm harmonies, an autumn passage of bittersweet, descending scales, and a winter movement of quiet, crystalline silence. The audience for this eternal performance is a mix of attentive nature spirits and awestruck humans, their postures showing they are not just hearing the music, but feeling it in their very bones. Every detail of the carving reinforces this collaborative art. The earth drums are studded with gemstones that focus their vibrations, the wind flutes have valves that control the pitch of the air, and the fire xylophone's keys are carved from different types of wood to produce unique tones as they burn. The conductor's gestures are precise and deliberate, one hand coaxing a gentle rain shower from the water harp, the other signaling a dramatic volcanic fanfare from the fire section. The music's effect on creation is immediate and visible, with new flowers blooming in time with the melody and rivers changing their course to follow the flow of the song. Elemental interactions are mythologized in texts, of course, but as battles and conquests, never as this intricate, cooperative performance. So why was this magnificent symphony, this vision of a universe in musical accord, never recorded in the written myths? The concept was likely considered too abstract, too deeply felt to be confined to the linear structure of words and sentences. You cannot capture the sensation of a chord that resonates through stone, air, and soul with ink on a page. It was an understanding that thrived in the space between sound and silence, a truth best expressed not in a story to be read, but in a harmony to be felt. This 34th echo composes a forgotten myth where the world's enduring beauty is not a static creation, but a living, collaborative performance played on the grandest stage of all. These 33 echoes in stone and clay reveal a magnificent tapestry of myths that the written texts left behind. Each carving is a distinct voice from the past, challenging and profoundly enriching everything we thought we knew about ancient legends. From the unrecorded celestial coronation of a king to the hidden symphony of the elements, these artifacts collectively remind us that true mythology is not confined to fragile parchment. It is a living, visual dialogue with history itself, etched into materials meant to endure the slow erosion of time. They offer us alternative perspectives on the very foundations of civilization, showing us that power could be cosmic, that nature was a partner, and that creativity was a tangible, collaborative force. These silent stones urge us to look beyond the official pages, to seek out the enduring materials that remember the truths the scribes were told to forget. The philosopher Ananda Kumaraswamy once offered a beautiful insight that the artist is not a special kind of person, but rather, each person is a special kind of artist. Let these echoes inspire you to become that artist of discovery, to explore the silent stories that surround you, whether in the weathered carvings of an ancient ruin or the powerful symbolism of a modern sculpture. We would love to hear which of these echoes resonated most deeply with you. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more journeys into the hidden myths that continue to shape our world. Thank you for joining this exploration. May you always listen carefully for the quiet, enduring echoes that written words can never truly